dream that Jacob had and how we can apply this to our lives. Sometimes our understanding of church is not necessarily a biblical understanding. Some people think the church is a building. It's not. The church is the people of God. We gather in a building. Number two, ownership of the church is God's. Jesus said, I will build my church. Okay? But he partners with humanity to do that. And if there is one thing I learned from this scripture and the revelation that God gave Jacob is not to measure my own spirituality by somebody else's sinfulness. Now I wish you can grasp that, because it's a hard truth to grasp. Very often we measure our spirituality and holiness, with a lot of holes in it sometimes, by somebody else's sinfulness. But God's measurement of human lives and failed humanity is often at variance with us. And so the church that Jesus came to build was a church that was totally foreign to the religious people of his day and time. And that is what they found challenging. Jesus didn't make sense to religious people. And very often, if we are not careful, we can be caught in this web of religiosity where we are harsh and judgmental on people who fail and forget that we are where we are only by the grace of God. Amen? Don't get an amen for that. So we have to bring our understanding of church in line with the church that Jesus came to build. Sinful people were attracted to him. And the Pharisees and scribes, who only used the King James version of the Bible because that was the only inspired version, they said, he is a friend of sinners. He associated with sinful people with the intention of changing their lives, not allowing them to change his. That's the distinction. And the church of the future is out there among the hundreds of people who don't know we exist. And I must admit that when I talk to unchurched people, I'm very careful how I present the image of the church, because the image they have of us isn't very good. Often we have contributed to that misconception. It's got silence, so I must be online. Jacob left Beersheba and went to Haran, verse 10 of Genesis 28, and he came to a certain place. And 3 times he talks about the place. He was between a rock and a hard place. Now you know it's very interesting. Jacob had to grow up with an overprotective, manipulating mother. 3 times it says she tells Jacob, listen to my voice. God had given Rebecca as a mother wisdom how to bring up her two children. God had revealed the natures of the children. God had given a promise to Jacob that out of Jacob's line would Messiah come. But Rebecca, being a mother and having a maternal instinct, manipulates Jacob in the direction that she believed and knew God wanted Jacob to go. And that comes to the Garden of Eden. Manipulation began in the Garden of Eden and continues from generation to generation. And I want to speak to parents out of my notes. If you believe God has given you a promise for your son or your daughter, hold on to that promise. Don't try to manipulate God to bring that promise to pass in your time, not his time. Because as a consequence of Rebecca's manipulation, Rebecca was godly. She was a godly woman. But there is something in the maternal nature of a woman that is prone towards manipulation. God had promised that out of Jacob's line, he would do a great thing. And all Rebecca had to do was to hold on to the promise and let God outwork his purpose. You know, from time to time I've had parents come to me and say, can you pray for my son, pray for my daughter? And I ask, what do you want to pray for? And I'm thinking in my heart, I should be praying for you. I think you need prayer more than your son and daughter. I think they are managing their life pretty well. It's you who are trying to manipulate God into a position that you believe God has predestined for your child. If it's predestined, God will bring it to pass. Amen? He's either Lord or he isn't. There's no middle ground. And as a consequence, Jacob has to run away. And he's in a bad place. And so the church of Jesus Christ is a place where you can be in a bad place and yet God can turn your mess around and give you a ministry. In 1975, I was in a bad place. I look very sanctimonious now. I still struggle. I asked son, do you think temptation gets easier when you get older? He said, no, it gets worse. I said, that makes two of us. It's a place where people who are in a hopeless situation can experience the hope and grace of God. That's the church that Jesus came to build. I was in a bad place. An alcoholic at 23 years of age, with all good intents and purposes, trying to break the cycle of destruction over my life, till somebody loved me and cared for me enough to carry me and bring me to a place called the church. And let me tell you something, you can't live an effective Christian life outside the local church. The local church is the hope of the world, and when the church loses its purpose, the world has no hope. You can have church on television, and that's okay. But when you have a problem, you have no one to go to. And Jacob is running away, but even in that state of desperation, state of fear, state of anxiety, he's in a crisis, he's in what we call a middle moment of life, God in his grace gives him a revelation. So the church, it should be a place of revelation. Social interaction is not the primary purpose of church life. Just come and have a chat and go home. No. We should come with an openness to God, irrespective of who is speaking and ministering on the platform. In the Old Testament, God spoke through a donkey. In the New Testament, He sat on one. But if we come with a heart of openness, God, give me one word of encouragement that can see me not just through the day, but through my challenge. God will speak to you. So Jacob has no intention of meeting God. And that's what happens when people come into church for the first time. They often come sometimes with a problem, and it's all right. They come with a mess, and it's all right, because God has the capacity to turn the mess around. And we have to learn to be gracious to such people. Grace is a principle of truth that operates not just in the New Testament, but in the Old also. So Jacob is sleeping on a pillow, which wasn't very comfortable. He's in a place of discomfort. But in that place of discomfort, he has a revelation. He sees a ladder, and the angels of God ascending and descending. Wow. And in Jacob's understanding, God is trying to communicate to him that no matter how discouraged you are, how defeated you are, how powerless you might feel you are over your circumstances, I am still in control, because I am on top of the ladder. I can tell you a story, I can't for obvious reasons. I had to learn this experientially in Sri Lanka a couple of months ago. I was caught between a rock and a hard place. And it was really a rock and a hard place. And I rang up my wife. When you are between a rock and a hard place, the best person to talk to is your spouse. And I said, you know, I'm between a rock and a hard place, but God is on top of the ladder. He is Jehovah God. And it is in that place of desperation that God can often communicate to us. That's the encouragement. That God looked at Jacob. Now the word Jacob means deceiver, supplanter. You know, that's not a great name to have. And yet, God looked beyond what was on the outside and saw what was on the inside. That comes to another interesting point, that when God looks at us, He doesn't look at our limitations, He doesn't look at our flaws, because we will never be perfect. But it says in Malachi chapter 1 verse 1 to 4, Jacob have I loved, and Esau have I rejected. Now when you read that, it might seem God has favorites. No. The difference between Esau and Jacob was this. Jacob had a passion for spiritual things which Esau hadn't. That's the difference. Esau lived at a carnal level when Jacob wanted something more from God. He wanted the birthright. And the birthright had a lot of spiritual significance. And that's what he wanted. So although Jacob had more angles than a pyramid, God looked into the heart of Jacob and said, there is something in this guy that I can use after I have straightened him out. This was the first encounter. He had two more before he ultimately became Israel. Israel means prince. You have prevailed, struggled with God and prevailed. And yet, after Genesis 31, he's sometimes called Israel, he's sometimes called Jacob. And yesterday I was watching a very respected speaker, Christian speaker, and you know, I used to look at this guy and think he's got his life together, you know, and he was sharing, he says, I still struggle. Oh wow. None of us, if we are honest and transparent, have it together. We might put it on in church on Sunday morning, but we can't fool God. And I thought, wow, if he can struggle, I can. How many of you struggle with temptation? Wow, some of the guys in the back must be there. It's all right. It's what we choose to do with the temptation. When I became a new Christian, I was walking down a road and I was single at the time when I quantified the statement. And there was an attractive young lady walking down the road and I looked once. I know none of you do that over here. And then the guy who was walking with me was a Christian. He said, the first look is temptation, the second look is sin. I like his evaluation. I never forgot that. So Jacob was in a broken place. And yet in that place of brokenness, God revealed himself to him. And so I want to encourage you today. Whatever is happening or going on in your life, God has the power to turn your life around if you are willing to surrender and relinquish your right of self-government to Him. That's important. Jacob gets up out of his dream. God has said, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie, I will give it to you, and to your offspring. Your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth, and you shall spread abroad east, west, north, south, and in you and your offspring shall all the families of the earth be blessed. And you know what I realized? That the blessing and favor of God is designed to go beyond you. Many Christians live selfishly and they live miserably. When you look at some people, you think they've drunk a bottle of vinegar. Selfishly. On the other hand, there are people who haven't much, but their lifestyle portrays a life of generosity. That's the difference. They don't have much, but out of the little they have, they give away. And they always want to be a blessing to others. And as a consequence, what they give to others is multiplied and returned back to them. I can assure you, if you are sitting here this morning and you live selfishly, you are miserable. You don't need the word of knowledge to discover. Jacob is selfish. He wants it for himself. You know, there are people in life you meet, what's in it for me? And if there's nothing in it for me, I don't get involved. That was Jacob. And God had to work through Jacob and squeeze him a little and send him through a ringer, that at the end of his life, he began to realize, everything I have is not mine. I am a steward of what God has placed in my hands. and I will steward it well. He says that further down. Then Jacob awoke, verse 16, from his sleep and said, surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. And he was afraid. How awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God and the gate of God. That comes to another principle. That the house of God is a holy place. It's a place where we treat God with the highest respect, because God is God of the universe. And we don't come to church in a flippant manner, like we are going to some party or function, but we reverence the house of God. And if there is one thing I have observed in the Western church, is the distinction between how we approach God in the East and how we do it in the West. Because we are under grace. Read your Bible. It's a holy place. God is not to be treated flippantly. Be ye holy, for I am holy. It's not an option. I think 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, there's a verse which says, this is the will of God, even your sanctification. The word sanctification means to be set apart. So early in the morning, Jacob took the stone that he had put under his head and set it for a pillar. And he put oil on top of it, and he called the name of that place Bethel. But the name of the city was Luz at the first. Then Jacob made a vow. He made a vow. It was a place of consecration. Since God will be with me, not if in the original language. Since God will be with me, will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and clothing to wear, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God, personally. And this stone which I have set up for a pillar shall be God's house, and of all that you give me, I will give a tenth unto you. So Jacob goes beyond the ladder experience. Too many Christians live off a subjective experience, and when trouble strikes, they don't know how to get through. Subjective experiences are great. They are wonderful. But we can't feed off them. A subjective experience is when you have a great time of worship and you go home and you feel that, wow, and on Monday morning you got to go back to work and the challenges are there, or you got to go back to a marriage that is you're struggling with, or you got to go back to a business that is not doing as well as you should, or you go back to a boss whom you dislike. Just change your attitude. It's out there that the rubber hits the road. But Jacob went beyond the ladder experience. He had a rhema word from God. And God says, I will be with you. Wow. That's enough. There's a finality in that. And if you learn to build your life on that foundation, when the challenges come, when the discouragement comes, you can draw from that well of God's truth and you can go on to the next level. God is reminding Jacob of his ability and his power in a place where Jacob felt powerless. And God is interrupting Jacob's agenda and introducing his agenda. You know, I listen to a lot of praying because I'm around Christians most of the time. And most prayers are our agendas. We sort of got a list lined out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we bring it to God, and like a genie in the bottle, open it up, and I bring my prayer request, and 3 minutes, okay, God, thank you, you're going to do it in Jesus' name. It doesn't work like that. In the garden, Jesus said, let thy will be done. So that is the pivotal point of any prayer. the pivotal point. We have got so used to the prosperity style of praying that we don't know how Jesus prayed and Paul prayed. He said, let thy will be done. Whatever your will is, there is a finality in the outcome. Paul prayed 3 times for the thorn in the flesh, and God's response was, don't ask me any further. Thy will be done. My grace is sufficient. So was that a limitation? Was that a lack of faith? It wasn't. It wasn't. Paul knew how to pray. Paul knew how to accept the will of God with finality. And he didn't allow that impediment to be detrimental to his life purpose. I met a guy 2 weeks ago in Sri Lanka. He's about 75 years old. He's dying of cancer. And I met him in a restaurant with 20 people he has brought from Sweden. And he's doing mission work in Sri Lanka. The cancer isn't an impediment to him. And he got up in the church and he sang 2 songs. And after he had finished singing the songs, there was no need to preach. There was an altar call and people responded. God is doing more through his struggle than without the struggle. And I thought, what faith? Does it mean he has a lack of faith? No. He has accepted the will of God and he spoke to me. And I was told he has only 6 months to live. But he is living his life with purpose. And what is a physical limitation from a medical point isn't a limitation to God. He could only sing those songs one day at a time, sweet Jesus, he sang. Wow. And he sang it with such passion that with 40 years of preaching, I couldn't produce the same result. So Jacob says, since God will be with me, and he will look after me, and bring me back to my father's house. You see, there was a fractured relationship. And God had promised to restore the fracture. That's a place of the church. That whatever you might be going through in life, whatever challenges you have had relationally, God can put the pieces together. Somebody said, Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall and had a great for all the king's horses, all the king's men, couldn't put Humpty together again. Yeah, but God can. That no matter how broken we are, no matter what fracture there is in our lives, God can put the pieces together. Because He's God. And so, as a consecration and surrender of his life, he takes the oil and he pours it on the pillar of stone. And he says, God will now be my God. And the word he uses for God there is Jehovah, Yahweh, Supreme, Commander of my life. So I want to challenge you today that you might be going through your own crisis of faith. You might be going through your own struggle which you believe is unique to you. And nobody understands. Don't expect them to. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. When we go through struggle, we go on a pity party. We've all been there. But like Jacob, begin to take responsibility for your spiritual growth. Your spiritual life is your responsibility. And say, I'm going to grow up. I'm going to stop depending on people to so find me all the time. And when you start doing that, you start growing into another dimension of faith, another dimension of belief. Because God's way is always upward, not downward. And so Jacob comes out of that place a better person. So he engages with God. God communicates to him and tells him, Jacob, I know you have more angles than a pyramid. And yet there is some portion of you that I can work on. And I'm willing to work on it if you give me the chance. That's what I did in 1975. I was sitting in a church like this, and I had more angles than a pyramid. Oh boy, I can tell some stories. 3 people want to hear the story, put your hands up, I'll tell the story. Okay. You want to hear the story? No, you heard all these stories. When I was 15, 16, 17 years old, I used to walk around with a pack of cards. I'm pretty slick at the cards. And I would go to some homes and play a game called Asking Hitting, and I would always win. Because I was pretty sharp, cards smart. I was street smart. I learned everything on the streets. And I used to make a lot of money. And I used to sometimes wait. There was a lady who was sort of connected to me, and the poor lady, she would get a pension by the end of the month, and I would just, how about some cards, I won't go into all the details, but I came out the better. And then I would give her the money back at 20% interest, But then, when I came to Christ, I had to turn my life around. And like Jacob, I said, God, I'm sick of this life. You have something better for me. And I want the better part. I'm reminded of Mary and Martha. Martha was encumbered with much serving. She's running around like a bee in the bonnet, with the bonnet. And Mary is sitting there at the feet of Jesus. And Jesus says, Mary has chosen the better part. So I was in a bad place. I was a mess emotionally. But God came into my life. I had a revelation. I'm in the house of God. This is the house of God, and I did not know it. And I surrendered my life to the person of Jesus. And looking back now, I can see that there was a tiny part in me that always desired to serve God, even in that state I was in. And that's what God wanted. That's all. The Christian life is not complicated. Christianity is not a religion. A religion is man trying to reach God. And the more we try, the more distant God gets. Christianity is a relationship with the person of Jesus. For God so loved the world that He gave His only Son, that whosoever believes in Him shall not perish, but have eternal life. That's all. It's not complicated. We complicate it. We package it so badly that nobody wants it from a bar of soap. And I thank God for the one person who believed in me enough in that state I was in to take me, carry me and bring me to the house of God. And I said, God is in this place. And I didn't know it. Came to know Christ. And God, by His grace, did a turnaround. So in closing, let me encourage you. Can I have the words, please? Never ever lose sight of why the church exists. Never ever lose sight. The church exists to give hope to the hopeless. That people can come in with their wretchedness, their misery, their mess, and be transformed by the grace of God. Number two, the church is a place that promises restoration and reconciliation in the context of life's brokenness. It's a place of hope. It's a place of inspiration. I am broken, I know it. But by God's grace, He will give me another chance to make something of my life. Thirdly, it's a place where consecration and commitment is our response to God's revelation. A place where we learn to live a life of obedience to His word. So it's one thing to come to church and just listen to a message and thank God for the worship and go home. No. It goes beyond that. It's a place where we learn obedience. And that is where the challenge is. When God reveals Himself to us, He expects a response of obedience. Don't treat the grace of God lightly. We are saved by God's grace, but along with that grace comes a responsibility to live our lives in a manner that other people who are not Christian can look at us and see the difference. You know, I'll close with this story. When I was working in a large company in Sri Lanka, with the general manager of the company, we used to get commission. You know, people come and we buy something off people and we get 10% commission. If they don't give the commission, we don't buy the stuff. You know, wheeling and dealing. But the day I became a Christian and committed my life to Christ, I told my GM, from tomorrow morning, no commission here. He said, yeah, take a ride. I said, if you take commission, I will have to go to the chairman of the company and tell him that you are taking commission. Nothing. My way or the highway. And when I finally left that company to migrate to Australia, all the directors and general managers of the company met on the 4th floor. And the one thing, the chairman of my company, who is N.E. Veerasuria's son, a very famous lawyer in Sri Lanka, the one thing he said was this. He said, I knew this man before and after his Christian experience, and I have seen the difference. Only by the grace of God. He didn't say that. I added that. So people, watch our lifestyle. You and I are the message. We are the message. And if you and I are not salt and light, we are useless. So Jacob was transformed on the inside first. Jacob wanted his outside fixed. And we all want that, that's why we pray. But God said, if I can fix your inside, then the outside will look after itself. So I told God to fix my inside. And it wasn't easy because, you know, that commission I got every week, every day, other day, gave me a comfortable life. But now it's gone. Turn around. Our God is the God of the turnaround. No matter what we have done, no matter how we have failed, no matter how broken we are, we can come to God, receive His grace, and turn our lives around. That is the freedom of choice God gives us. He won't make that choice for you, we got to make it for ourselves. Shall we pray? Can I ask the worship?